Hello everyone, this is yours Trivia. Welcome back to our Subscribe Game Tournament Season 2 as we continue with our Round 4 matchup featuring Yulia in the green versus White Cloud Hermit in the red. And starting things off in the pick ban phase, Yulia is banning first, starting with Huang Fusong, which led to Sun Ce in response by White Cloud Hermit. Then we had Cao Cao, Xu Huang, Lu Bu, and Hermit. And that opened up Wen-Chou as the first pick of this match by Yulia, who is a very strong general in his own right, being a champion with high health pools, good weapon, also the hamstring and binding fury ability on top of his special roar, which does 30 points of morale damage and can be used 4 times. In response, Yan Baihu is grabbed by White Cloud Hermit, which features the really powerful poison volley ability as well as the stock given to his retinue, which is very powerful. And no surprise that right after the pick of Yan Baihu, White Cloud Hermit used his next ban on Guo Jia to take away the cheapest foresight option. And following that, we have Yuan Shao being banned by Yulia, trying to limit the morale and potential father and son combo for the familial conflict. And that led to Zhang He being picked by White Cloud Hermit, which I think is quite interesting actually, as Zhang He obviously is a great option for foresighting with his geographic mastery doubling the range of every single unit on his side, and there's also a bit of charge resistance, extra speed, as well as ignore ground penalties as well as forest penalties. That's a very interesting pick, a kind of takeaway pick from your opponent when you have Yan Baihu, as they might not want to pick a strategist, and we've already seen Yulia in round 3 use Zhang He, even though at this time White Cloud Hermit did not know that. Then in response to that pick, we have Yulia going with Guan Yu here, going double down on the champion power with a good weapon, once again very fearsome ability in the God of War, which can potentially one-shot pretty much every general that's not a champion. Even the Sentinels might not die right away, it's still a huge chunk of health. I think it does 38k by default, and there's only 40k health on some of these Sentinels, even if they should block a majority of those damage with some of their armor. Then looking at the last round of bans before the final picks, we have Zhang Bao being taken out, which is another sort of poison user. The stacking of Zhang Bao's Yaoguai Hunters and the poison volley from Yan Baihu, as well as the potential of Yan Baihu's White Tiger Raiders, all those poisons will stack differently and can lead to massive damages to anyone's infantry line. So taking out Zhang Bao here makes some sense, even though it does take away a potential foresight pick, as well as Yaoguai Hunters have extremely long sighting range and can be used as another alternative to strategists with foresights to counter Yan Baihu. And finally, for the last ban, we have White Cloud Hermit banning Diao, which is one of those immobilized plus Wisdom the River characters. Perhaps he's worried about a combo with Diao plus Guan Yu, as she can lock people in place, reduce their evasion, allowing Guan Yu to score a guaranteed God of War, as the Wisdom River effect, or her Deadly Beauty, I believe it's called, also reduce armor, allowing the full damage of God of War to go through with a guarantee hit, pretty much killing a general right there. So taking Diao out of the picture after seeing Guan Yu. Very reactive, very excellent choices, and that led to the final blind pick on both sides, which turned out to be Sun Jian for White Cloud Hermit. As we have seen so far, Sun Jian has sort of emerged as alternative to Xu Huang, doing very similar things as a unbreakable sentinel with the Flame of Phoenix ability and some very interesting weapons and stats. He obviously will also have the impetuous charge ability that can give massive flat charge bonus to all units nearby, and that can be very good for a direct charge attack. Then on Yulia's side, we're tripling down on champions by picking Yan Yu, who not only offers a good weapon, the Stalker ability, as well as Mending, which can make these champions very good and sturdy fighters, as it will shore up some of their weakness in terms of lack of evasion, by giving them 50% during that healing period and also giving them 50% armor as well. So definitely a nice defensive choice along very strong offensive generals already. And now let's shift over to the loading screen and see which units are brought on these generals. Now taking a look here on Yulia's side, we have pretty standard unit choices across the board. A lot of infantry. We have 2 Ye Vanguard Spearmen to counter a bit of cavalry threat, even though there are probably not that many cavalry options from the 2 generals that is shown. Yanbaihu might bring some bandit raiders, but those will be invisible and it'd be very hard for the crossbow unit to shoot at something they can't see. Then we also have 2 Northern Saber Infantry, which are probably okay. After seeing how the Saber Infantry performed in our previous matchup, I'm not going to say they're a bad choice, but we're going to have to see if they can match the performance of Saber Infantry here. 2 Northern Lancers to provide a bit of cavalry, as it's quite lacking when you have 3 champions to find a good cavalry option, which is why we see a couple of cheap mounted Lancer militias on Guanyu, as there are very few good units on Liu Bei's roster, and the only thing that is added to that is an E-Archer, which is the unique unit that can fire while moving, perhaps to add a bit of fire arrow threat to the composition, as it really do lack range across the board. And finally, as a cheap unit, we have the Yue Tribesmen, which are essentially like Spear Warriors. They have very high armor piercing damage, decent charge, but defensive stat are very lacking. Perhaps it can be shored up if they fight in the forest with the Stalker bonus from Yan Yu. In response, we have White Cloud Hermit bringing also a pretty standard unit, although there's probably a bit of an overspin on those Ye Vanguard Spearmen, as we see 6 of them. They bring a very powerful crossbow, but it only works really well against enemy cavalry, as there are only 30 units to shoot at in a cavalry, and with accurate crossbow shots you can take out that unit. Against a swarm of infantry, it's going to be less useful, and it's an interesting choice because 2 champions were picked on the other side, so the unit choices on those champions are rather limiting. So can't possibly expect too many valuable cavalry to be picked to justify going 6 units of the Ye Vanguard Spearmen, as each of them costs 1,000, and 4 of them are actually upgraded a little bit as well, which is a good choice since they do get firing rate on top of all the regular upgrade stats. Then we have 2 of the Yue Remnant Warriors, which is a standard staple on Yanbaihu, very cost efficient heavy sword unit. And then we have a couple of those bandit raiders we talked about, as well as 1 Yue Tribesman. Then finally, on Sunjian, we get to bring 1 of the Handmaid Guard, which protects the general by giving them a bit of damage resistance. And with both sides' army set, let's hop into deployment and see how this battle actually plays out. So looking at the deployment here, we can see that there is a pretty advanced guerrilla deployment by White Cloud Hermit to put his Ye Vanguard Spearmen with their square formation in the front. Now, because he does not know who the 3rd general is, there is no attempt to make Yanbaihu guerrilla deploy behind enemy lines, because it could be a foresight general like Zhou Yu who could expose him. So all the units, including his supposedly stock units, are kept together. The generals stay together with their Handmaid Guard. The only aggressive deployment are these cavalries hiding in the forest on the side, which almost overlaps with what Yulia brings, as these will bump into each other in this forest at the very beginning of battle. Then looking at rest of Yulia's composition, we have a lot of her infantry hiding in the forest, as they are pretty vulnerable Yue Tribesmen. That will benefit quite a bit if they can get the Stalker ability up. The generals and the cavalry are pretty much in the front. The units with shield are spread out, because Yulia knows Yanbaihu is on the other side. So the goal here is not provide any straight lines to get targeted by the poison volley. At most, you want maybe 2 units to get hit by those arrows, so nothing where you see 3 units in a straight line. These are too far, so like that unit would not get hit even if these 2 get targeted. The others that are sort of in a straight line at least are hidden, so Yanbaihu will not be able to aim at them. And then you see the targets are rather limited, so this spread is very good to counter Yanbaihu, and pretty much the standard way to go about it. If you don't want to bring a foresight general, just don't keep your units together. And let's see how this battle goes. as these crossbow ranges are only 160, so they're not really going to be able to hit these cavalry at this distance. Yan Baihu knows no one can spot him, so he is off on his own. The cavalries have bumped into each other, and it looks like the three generals are giving a response. Perhaps this is an opportunity for Sun Jian and the rest of them to harass the front lines a little bit, as Yulia is forced to back off with the generals. The cavalry's pretty much lost 2v3 at this point. Don't want to extend the damage by allowing the generals to come here to get free damage on the units. Yan Baihu has spread out. He's going to try to look for a shot. There's not really many good shots, as you can see the spread. Makes it pretty hard for him to find a decent shot here. So in the end, Wen Chou went alone to try to stabilize by roaring. These units will all rout. 30 points is too much for them to handle. So he is enough. And we see that Yan Baihu has got too close, and the crossbow unit has spotted him and tried to hit him for a little bit. He did lose a bit of health, but nothing too major. He's still looking for an angle, and this is probably the best angle he can find. And he's going to try to damage these two units here best he could. And the thing about Yan Baihu is you just want to limit your loss there. I'm not sure if he roared. It doesn't look like it, because there is no roar effect on any of the units. It looks like he's just here to help out with the fight, and that was enough to turn things around. Yan Baihu obviously exposed himself. Decent damage on both of these units. About 20 to 30 depending on the spread of the arrows and the health per unit as well. A little bit of return crossbow damage. Because of the way the squares are set up, it's very hard for Yulia to approach that setup. But at the same time, I think White Cloud wants to stay close to it if he wants to utilize that. If he chased too far out to try to save his cavalry, maybe he might get himself in trouble, as the champions are still better fighters compared to sentinels. If it's not down to a dueling setup where, you know, there's no charge. If you do charge on someone, you ignore their evasion. So that's a good way to get some chunk damage on the sentinels. So Wen Chou was able to clear this. Oh, we got the charge used, so everyone got massive charge bonuses as they're trying to get some damage on Wen Chou here. Might not work. There's also the problem of them not being unbreakable, especially Zhang He. If he gets targeted and lose a bit of health during this process, he might rout. And that's what Yulia is going for. Yan Baihu ran into a unit. There is a spear falling, which is really smart, as this has the crossbow as well to take out some of the cavalry. Yan Yu went to look for Yan Baihu, but Yan Baihu looped around because invisibility. And now they're just going to try to pick off this handmade guard, which is just a little slow to get back. 83 speed, not enough. The generals pulled out. And the square is set up to try to kill off these cavalry, just by using the crossbow. There's small concerns about friendly fire, which is why it's hesitant to fire, but this unit should get picked off pretty quick. Alright, so we have the generals trying to look for a fight. Yan Yu is placed in the forest, which is correct, as you will give your units bonuses here. So very clever use of that stalker ability, which Yan Baihu has as well. And we see the invisible units being moved up. They probably could have moved a bit earlier to try to flank, as no one would know their movement. Alright, Yulia's moving that square back as it got its job done, basically. These cavalries are pretty doomed here. As long as they don't get too close to the square, cow traps being thrown. Okay, a little bit too close, that cavalry might die. But maybe just trade it, that way all the cavalries are dead. Tactical withdrawal, give them a little speed, give a little range box chance for no friendly fire. Cavalry's being pulled back, Guan Yu's being pulled back, yep. And will this unit survive? Yes, with 8 morale, it's going to survive. Are we going to get a general fight? No. Well, he's still going for the handmade guard to take away that 25% damage resistance. And Mending's being used. Going a little bit too far to get the benefit, but Lease is used on both of them, so they will both have a very nice stat boost during the next 30 seconds? 15 seconds? 15 seconds. As they're hunting down Yanbaihu as they see him. Don't want to get too close to the crossbow damage. They will hurt the generals. This cavalry's probably doomed. I don't think it can pull out with this many crossbows on them. I think this unit is just dead. Yanbaihu's looking for his second, potentially third shot. Nope, second shot. No one else took damage after that initial burst. I'm amazed this unit pulled out. Only lost 2 more. Looks like Yulia's about to commit all the infantry. I guess now the enemy cavalries are doomed. It's time for the infantry fight. Yanbaihu should look for a good target right now. There's range advantage on E-archers. They can fire while moving. They should advance towards line. It's 200 range versus 160. Yanbaihu is trying to get a shot on... Did it scratch this one? No, it didn't scratch this one. It only got... It got 2 units. It got 2 units. Oh, 3. That's not too bad. 3 units is good. I think that's a... I want to say that's a Binding Fury, not a God of War use. But it's kind of hard to tell by the animation. It looks the same. The animation should be the same. The chunk damage... I mean, he does have 50% armor. He lost 18... I think it's only a Binding Fury. Just looking at the damage figures. It could be God of War. Because if it's God of War, it's gotta be at least 19k damage. And he has 40 health, so I think it's just a Binding Fury. Alright, we have the infantry advancing. Crossbows obviously being a factor. But ranged weapons, if you can close the gap, it doesn't hurt. I don't know why Sun Jian's not going for a Flame of Phoenix on these units. They're unattended. The micro attention is entirely on Yanbaihu right now, which is a missed opportunity as the generals are coming in. Okay, they're being pulled. But yeah, there was like no micro on these 2 generals at all. Yanbaihu has hurt himself once again, fighting the enemy crossbow unit. Let's see if they can do the same thing to these champions. We got a hamstring attempt. Hamstring is only good when you're dismounted. That animation, it's great when you're dismounted to clear units. Mending used on all 3. Excellent. This is the stat boost you're looking for. That's the 3rd mending, I think. There's 1 more mending left. Heals a little bit just to keep you topped off, but mainly for that stat boost. We'll see if there's any dismount by any of... I think both Ventral and... No, it's just Ventral who has the potential to use hamstring while dismounted. But I guess the charge is enough. Easily wreck the unit. Yeah, Remnant Warriors. Without even roaring as well. Here comes the response. Is Yanbaihu bouncing back? Yes, he is, but he's still a little far away. The only problem... Okay, that's a nice roar. The only problem with Zhang He is, aside from his passive, he doesn't bring any other good abilities to the fight. He has a good spear, so like, fighting is okay, but we see here he's kind of wavering. Okay, he got his ability timed out, so he's fine. They're fighting the 1 archer unit. Let's see if Yanbaihu can get some value over here. Now, I think Yulia should just commit to charging all the units, because they're just tanking here for no reason. It's sort of like a half commit, where you're just getting shot for free at this point. And I also think the square should be swapped out to this, so that you get more shots on target. Now there's a couple directions that's not firing. Yanbaihu never got a shot off. I'm very shocked. He has at least 1 more. He's just wavering here fighting infantry. No dismounts by anyone. Oh, those crossbow shots. Yanbaihu's kind of free. Not anymore, but he was free for a moment. Now I don't think he's going to get... Okay, the last mending's being used. They're just a really good stat advantage at this point. Where essentially you have the evasion of a sentinel, the health of a champion. and over 100% armor during this period, which doesn't matter for crossbow shots, but they're not exactly shooting at generals first with all the units nearby. Finally, the units have collapsed in, and that's where the real weakness for the Ye Vanguard Spearmen comes in, because they're basically just spear guards. And spear guards are not very good in melee. Alright, we have a dismount. I don't know where Sun Jian's running to. He did activate his charge bonus, but no one's really charging. That's the God of War. Yeah, I think that's the God of War. You see the God of War used. It hit. He lost a chunk of health. And now Guan Yi's gonna finish him. He's trying to mount back to get out, and the animation. One jab. Zhang He has routed. He's not unbreakable, slightly low morale, got roared a couple times. Now, if Wen Chou dismount and actually use hamstring, he can actually kill these really quick. But maybe that's not required as the units are swarming. Guan Yu is fighting here. Yeah, hamster on the horse is okay. On the ground it's much better. Guan Yu joining up the cleanup. Zhang He did bounce back. We have Yan Yu going to cover him. Oh, crossbow damage, maybe? I mean, there's just so much health on champion. Even if you do take 10k off, it still looks like they're pretty topped off. He starts with 54k, so he lost 12k, but looks pretty good. Alright, as these two go down, this is the only unit left. I imagine army loss has kicked in, so that's gonna do it. Waiting for the full route to come through. Someone just had to touch them to remind them that, yep, it's over. Good battle overall. Not perfect in terms of micro, but no one's perfect. There was interesting ideas at play. Yulia clearly understood the unit line with the stalker ability, the spread of units to minimize the effect of Yanbaihu. And that made White Cloud Hermit a little bit hesitant to find good shots. He only really got one off, and then in the mid-game, he got one off at the Archer, which got 3 units. That was very good. But aside from those 2 shots, really didn't get full value from Yanbaihu, as he spent a lot of time just running around. The spread out fight with the early cavalry advantage didn't really play out that much in favor of White Cloud, as he ended up having to pull 2 cavalry back when Wen Chou went to go assist. Very alert play, though, when the generals first started to favor that side. White Cloud responded with the generals attacking the infantry line, which is the right play, because you want to trade better, basically. But Yulia was also pretty aware of that, as 2 of the generals were told to stay, and Wen Chou was the only one who went, and that was enough. And then as the fighting against the square formation happened, I think the most important thing is just charge at them. You pretty much only will get shot during the duration, as if they stayed in square, only 2 sides will hit you, so it's like half unit size. And the stop, where they basically did a move for a while, was a problem. But as you can see by the dead bodies on the ground, not a big problem. Like maybe there was 10, 12 units lost that really didn't need to be lost. But overall, as the general fight happened, Yanbaihu taking chunk damage here and there, trying to get shots off, getting hit by generals, getting hit by cavalry, getting hit by some of the crossbow unit with the Ye Vanguard, which was also a really good play. Pulling that Ye Vanguard to help the cavalry and also harass the enemy cavalry as they retreated back was also very good. And basically, he was taking out the fight pretty effectively. The use of God of War, the patient use of God of War until they landed a shot on Sun Jian, who was dismounted. So I guess that was the big wait. I think Yulia was waiting for someone to dismount with Guan Yu when you can make sure they can't just run away from the animation. To land that hit, knocking the unbreakable enemy general down to 4k was very effective. Trying to run away at that point was a little bit too late, but not anything you can really do about it after getting hit. You know, trying to run away is probably the best thing you can do. Just never really got off the ground, as Guan Yu was able to kill him after the mounting animation. And then at that point, with Yanbaihu ready routed, Zhang He not being unbreakable, ready taking some damage, just can't overcome the triple champion health pool and the mending 4 times, which were used very well, except for the first one where Guan Yu got a little bit ahead of himself chasing, but that was against Yan Baihu, so nothing wrong there. And let's look at the actual numbers. So Yan Baihu with 2 shots only got 63 kills. That's on the low side for sure. They got really good value, probably more than they should have, as most of the units did just hang out for a bit, which was a big problem. If they close the gap a little bit sooner, I think the numbers here will be a little bit lower. But it came down to the fact that these 3 generals all survived, and they couldn't really do much about that. Now, the pick ban was really interesting for this one because obviously I officiated all the pick bans, and after the match I did have a chat with both of them, because from the generals that were shown with Wen Chou, Guan Yu, Yan Baihu, and Zhang He, I was really curious if anyone decided to go with Zhang Fei as the 3rd pick, because the roar on Zhang Fei would knock out all the generals, since all 4 of them are not unbreakable, and that's a really cheap way to trade basically one of your picks for at least 2 of the enemies. In this case, Yan Yu is not unbreakable either. So if Zhang Fei was picked, then the 3 generals can't really operate together, or can't chase, because if they're out in the open together and they get roared and there's a cavalry unit that can chase them, then they basically just lose all 3 of your generals despite having, max health. So I think that's another really cool part about our pick ban phase, as counter picks in the 3rd slot becomes a very viable option, as Zhang Fei's rarely picked because it's sort of all in on the roar. And if you don't know who your opponents have and they turn out to be triple commander like we seen with Peanut's composition, then Zhang Fei is completely useless. But in this case, where 2 of the first pick are known to each other, that 3rd pick becomes a really nice spot where you can change things up with a pick like Zhang Fei, for example. But congratulations to Yulia, and really appreciate White Cloud Hermit for the good showing, as this one ended in 12 minute 01. So I think this is the 2nd fastest time so far. Peanut's still first, and I think Will Be Deed is currently last, and depending on how the last matchup between King of Yen and Peppa Pig Gaming goes, we'll see the matchup for our semifinals, as that will be ranked based on times of victory. So hopefully guys, you all enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!